Morning, everyone. It's the March 16th meeting of the Facilities and Infrastructure Committee. I noticed on my agenda I've already checked off the first four things because on Monday we had budget and personnel, and I started looking at that agenda rather than the budget agenda. So. Whoops. Are there changes to the agenda this morning? We have some public comment. I have a blue card from Susan Holland. Susan?
Good morning. Morning, everybody.
Morning.
You know me, I think, but I'll just say it for the record. I'm Susan Holland, Executive Director of Historic Ithaca. So I'm here with some good news. First, we appreciate all the work that's going into the Red House at 408 North Tioga. And so that it can benefit the property and the community, the conversations that you're having, the discussions here at F&I and the other legislators with the other legislators, Tompkins County and the Ithaca residents. So I just wanted to give you an update, some good news. We've had interest from people that want to purchase 408 North Tioga. I don't know if you've talked to anybody, but we've had a couple calls. As soon as there was discussion out in the press, people asked us what was going to happen. And so the interest is both residential and commercial for different people and different programs. We've spoken to a well-known real estate agent about her thoughts, and everybody's positive about it. So, we've been asked again and again, like, how bad is the basement? And we wondering if folks could get in and see it. We have a small developer who knows everything about tax credits, and he's interested and said, but I would need to know that. So everyone wants to know, yes, it can be fixed. Of course, anything can be fixed at any cost. But we're wondering if soon there might be a way to get that information, either from an engineering study that you already possess, from site visits, and what information is actually available. So it's a solution-based approach to what I know you're discussing, and we're here to help. I just wanted to say that. So thanks for this opportunity to let you know that. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. That's the only blue card I have. Are there anyone else that would like to address the committee this morning? Anybody online? Okay, I guess that's all. Well, here it is March, and we really need to talk a little bit about the goals for the committee. Hopefully folks have been thinking about that a little bit. I certainly would like to see us move the token further along on the downtown facilities. Make some decisions. We're getting emails from the public that know exactly what to do with it, the whole downtown facilities, and explaining to us why we should do what they think is correct. But I think we have to decide as representatives of the full county what's correct to do. So that would be one of the goals that I'd like to see on our list. I'd like to have an update on our bridge and highways. I know we do that every capital report, but I would really like to get maybe have Jeff spend some time with us talking about our needs. I know we haven't really built any new roads or bridges other than replacements. And whether we have any needs along that line or not. I know there's a couple of bridges that we've never replaced, for example. I'd be interested in learning about that. I'd really like to hear about the covered bridge, and that's something that we were going to try to do last year. We didn't get to. I'd like to invite in the keepers of the covered bridge and give us an update on the bridge and its status and its relationship to the Newfield community, particularly. And facilities, I would certainly like to hear more about our buildings. Maybe we could ask Gorell from time to time to talk about a particular building. For example, let's say the mental health building, for example. What's the status? What are we predicting it's going to need? Are there maintenance items that we've deferred in any way that we should be thinking about? And certainly the public safety building, when it gets to that point, I think we have to make a decision about that. So there's some of the things I was thinking about, and you folks may have other ideas. Deborah.
Yeah, I really, I appreciated the email we got from Ashley Miller. She made some really good points, and honestly, I share her perplexity. We've sat on this for 4 years, and there just seems to be this idea that the quality of a decision is somehow proportional to the amount of time you spend making it, and I frankly don't agree. I think the points she makes are cogent. I honestly, I want to thank Susan Holland and her group for finding a potential buyer. I do think we ought to move forward on this. Like I said at our last meeting, there's a logical order to making these decisions. Where do we want to put the center of government? Do we want it on North Tioga Street? I don't think so. Do we want it on the corner of Tioga and Buffalo? Thank you. I think that was the intention when we acquired that property. We really need to move forward with making these decisions because it gets more and more expensive to construct with every passing month and certainly with every passing year. And honestly, I appreciate the interest that the public has in the eventual fate of the Red House, but I'm tired of hearing about it. I think it's pretty clear that we don't want to deconstruct it if there's an interested buyer. So let's move forward with that. And another reason that I want to move this forward, because I think it's the main thing that we've been tasked with over the last couple of years, is that I really want to start moving forward on our geothermal and green facilities initiatives. And we can't do that as long as we sit here going around in circles about what we're going to do with this central government campus. So that would be my primary goal for this year. Thank you.
Randy.
Thank you. One of my goals, or one of the goals we should be around what it's going to cost to do all this. And I know we have a capital plan, which is changing all the time, right? I mean, I think there's a capital plan for 2023. Wasn't that for the first year of the government building? Or was it 2024?
We had design of the center of government in 2022, and I think to start construction in the spring of 2024.
Which isn't going to happen, obviously.
No.
I did have a chance to go to the budget and capital meeting and learn about the fund balance and Moody's credit rating, how that was done. It was very interesting. But I think it would be very helpful to know what our plan is and to know what our cost may be. For example, if whatever strategy we're going to do for the public safety building, where does that fit really? And then where do our costs really think we're going to be going forward? I know you have new software for budgeting, so if that's going to help you with that process or not. But also to know what we need to borrow and to look at that in conjunction with our fund balance and to see how that kind of floats through I think we need that plan before we can actually approve building anything. But I also want to know, I've mentioned this before in the fund balance, I'm aggressively looking at that, and I apologize for anybody who doesn't like that. But I want to know what the negatives are of if we have to pay a higher rate for any money we borrow on a bond. So if it's $200,000 more a year, or when are we going to borrow, all those kinds of things would be helpful to know as we plan to spend money. So I'm not sure if that made sense or not. And the other thing I thought really interesting, and I know the county's really focused on reducing greenhouse gases and converting to electric. I'd really
I'm
understand.
sorry, Randy, I didn't hear that.
The county's really focused on eliminating greenhouse gases, and we're converting to electric as much as we can.
Okay.
But I want to know the financial impact of that. So the benefit of it, for example, I know it's probably saving us money in some areas, but also what's the forecast of what those expenses are going to be? Because my guess is it's going to be higher over the long run, because all utilities will be higher, right, in some way. Nothing's going to go down. But I don't know what the electric costs, with demand costs going up and all the charging stations. I mean, demand has a lot to do with what you're billed at. So I'd like to see how that's going to traject. Regarding we need to make a decision on the Red House and the Baker building. I agree we should sell it. I took another tour of that with Arel a couple weeks ago. We walked through the whole building other than the basement. I'm doing a house, so I know what's involved. That house would have to be gutted. And even the floor joists would have to be replaced with, everything would have to be done. And not to mention, I don't know what you can do legally. But I agree with you, Mike, that somehow if we could retain some type of control over that lot as to what we're going to do with the remaining part of that lot, I think that's another determination. We need to understand really what's going to happen there. What can we even do there? Once you've sold those lots off to Ithaca neighborhood housing, if you sell this property, what's left, right? And I don't like the idea of just it being a parking lot, because that's pretty expensive parking. So that's that, and I'll stop right there.
Okay, thank you. Greg or Lee, ideas for goals?
I think everybody's hit on them pretty close. I'm where Randy is as far as having a better handle on what the overall fiscal impact would be of moving forward on the building projects. And I am glad that, the public safety aspects have somewhat been shifted back over here to incorporate into the building planning moving ahead. So, but I just hate to move forward with the concept of the center of government building not having a better idea of what the public safety building costs could potentially be. As I keep saying, we're in the tens and tens of millions of dollars when you consider all these projects together.
Greg?
Yeah, no, obviously costs are the deciding factor in many situations, but I think we also, in the development process, you have to spend a little bit of money to understand what it is you're going to build to then make the decision if the project is viable, right? We can use a ballpark, say it's going to be X number of thousands of square feet, we're currently building at this, then you can have a cost estimate if you want, but to really get a true cost estimate, we need to move forward and develop an actual plan and proposal and idea before we have, before we, nitpick over, do we put, granite or Corian or, Formica, right? And nitpick some of those costs. So if we want an overall estimate, I think we can look and say, okay, how big is the footprint of the lot? How many square feet can we build? What are municipalities building at per square foot right now? There's our costs. What's our current rate to borrow? I think we can do some of that math relatively quickly, but I think to really get a true cost in the process in which we should follow is we should put a plan together of what it looks like, what's the size, what's the shape. I think we need to go down that development path, and yes, that will cost probably several hundred thousands of dollars. But I think to get to a point where we can make a decision to either greenlight a project or shelf a project, unfortunately, that's the cost of development, and that's what we need. That's what we need to do. So I would like to see us go down that path, because I do agree. We don't want to spend tens of millions of dollars. I'd rather spend a couple hundred and be able to make a good decision than kick this ball around and not really have, because right now we're kind of debating an idea. I'd like to debate something that we can like touch and feel, because I think the idea has already been debated. The idea has already been moved forward. I personally have a different idea, but I'm gonna shelf my idea because I think my idea is just a little too bold, a little too crazy, a little too much right now for folks, because I'd like to have something different. And you've all heard me in previous meetings say that, but I will shelf that idea because I think that this is the idea that we have in front of us, that previous legislatures have debated and made decision on. I don't necessarily think we need to uphold all of those, but I do think we need to honor some of that time and thought and decision that went into that. So I would like to move forward with really getting down and dirty and rolling up our sleeves with what the plan is for the corner. I'm not necessarily ready to sell off the Red House. I appreciate the idea that there's someone interested in it, but I also think that we have opportunity within the county that we could solve in that side, and I think we kicked around some other ideas at one point, and I think we in some way, if we didn't like to play things as conservative and safe as we do sometimes, do something to help solve housing, to help solve re-entry issues, to help look at women or men that need housing, or people that need housing. I think we could do something as a county, and I don't think we should be so quick to just dismiss that space. I'm not sure why the dental building is still standing. I thought there was a decision of last year that was coming down, so I'm a little discouraged for whatever reason that it's still there, because I thought that was already a decision that was made. I don't think we should open that can back up. And in this committee, I would like to have a balance between updates and action. And I think that we need to make sure we balance those two, right? So that, and the public safety building is obviously something that's going to keep coming up and is a concern, and we need to address. But I would say it's in the queue behind potentially a center of government, and that's unfortunate. And if we can do it all together at the same time, great, let's do it. But if we can't, I don't think we should sacrifice one at the expense of the other. Or I know we have some complicated decisions to make. I just think we need to start making decisions. That my goal would be action from this committee, and whatever that looks like this year, we need to take action, because I don't think another year of sort of updates and cost estimates that keep shifting is really a productive use of anyone's time.
Thank you. Anything else on goals? Any other thoughts? I think this has been useful. I'm going to ask Taylor if she might be able to distill these down to some bullet points for us, so that we can have them to refer back to. Thank you. Just a quick update on the proposed new jail task force. Rich, John, and Travis Brooks and I have talked briefly about it, and we're looking probably for a group of about 8 people. There'll be some citizens. Travis has talked to some people. There'll be some legislators. We're still waiting for a charge from the chair, which we're going to be helping with. And we're hoping to have this thing be about a 4-month process. We don't want it to go on forever. We have to pick a date for our May meeting, because we've had to adjust it because the staff are all going to run away on us and go do something like training. And we've been proposed 4 different days in May, all at 9 a.m. That's the 11th, the 23rd, the 24th, and the 25th. And I wondered if folks have looked at those and have a preference of when to do that.
I'm going to be out of the country in May, so, you guys can do it whenever, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, we'll have to zoom you in.
I don't think so. But
Okay,
thanks.
well, then we'll go back to the 4 of us here. The 11th would be the week before our normal meeting. And that's a Thursday. The 24th is a Wednesday. And the 25th is a Thursday, a week after our normal meeting.
I would lean towards the 11th personally, just the proximity to the Memorial Day holiday and all the craziness that brings around town.
Works on my calendar.
The 11th?
Lee?
May's a tough month for me, but the 11th looks like it would work right now. 11th or the 24th.
Why don't we try to plan for the 11th then? At 9 o'clock.
It's a Thursday.
Okay, let's go to our county administrator. Lisa?
The only, to pick up on your previous discussion, the only update I have is that I've been asked and will be preparing a presentation of the center of government, kind of the history or how we've gotten to where we are in terms of all of the decision that will be given at the legislature meeting this coming Tuesday to bring everyone up to speed at the same time. So, I'll be I'm in the midst of preparing that. Staff is assisting me with that. And then I believe follow up from last month's discussion, Norma, you have an update on the CDL?
Just that we've met the Highway Department and the airport. We've discussed what the options might be. I've reached out to Department of State Motor Vehicle, and I'm kind of waiting back to make sure that this is something that they're still interested in us pursuing. And if that is true, then we'll start looking at what the costs and what opportunities there are there.
When the Commissioner of Motor Vehicles was here a couple of months ago at the airport, he was very, very interested in our doing that. But, of course, didn't offer any money. But I'm glad you're looking into that.
Yeah,
Thanks
and it
for that
sounds
report.
like our Highway Department would find value in that. So it wouldn't be a waste of our time to at least investigate it. So
We've been talking, certainly in the Budget Committee, about if we've got things that would require spending to bring them forward early and not have them at the last thing at the budget meetings we have in the fall. And I, for one, would like to see us look at the cost of putting that together and possibly having that as a capital project.
And Jeff will be doing that. We just didn't see the value in them spending time until we were sure that we had buy-in in writing from the Department of Motor Vehicles. So as soon as we have buy-in for that, he's already kind of geared up for that. Yep, thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I think this is year 4 we've been trying to figure out something on that one. See, things take a long time, Deborah.
Sometimes
Okay.
they do, and sometimes they shouldn't.
Anything else? Anything else, Lisa?
This is your fault, Norma.
I think that covers it. Thank you, Mike.
Questions for Lisa? Transportation Planning. I see Terry's here. Terry, you want to come up?
Hello, folks.
Welcome.
So this is a resolution to accept some funding that we're getting from the DEC for our zero emissions vehicles, the EVs that we purchased. This is an opportunity that comes around once a year. It's essentially available if you meet certain criteria. So you have to buy an electric vehicle with a certain amount of range. It has to come from a New York State dealership. So that, places some parameters on us. Most of the vehicles that we buy meet those, especially the electric vehicles. But occasionally we do have to buy a vehicle from a dealership that's not in New York State due to bidding requirements. So this previous year, we were able to purchase 7 vehicles that qualified. 2 of them were Chevy Bolt EUVs. There were 2 regular Chevy Bolts, and then there were 2 Ford Mustang Mach-E's and 1 Nissan Leaf for a variety of different departments. Total of $52,500. The one thing I want to mention with this is, we get questions about the price of electric vehicles being more expensive. Are we spending more money than when we were to buy regular vehicles? And this is the program that allows that cost to be brought down to not only parity, but in some cases bring it down below what we would normally buy a vehicle for. The Bolts, I think, are a great example of this. Right now you can buy a Chevy Bolt for $27,000. If you get $7,500 rebate on that, it's below $20,000, and quite frankly, we're not buying any vehicle for under $20,000. And so this is a program that is really helpful for us when we're buying vehicles and electric vehicles, and what's making it a financially positive decision, I would say. So we're happy to have applied for this. We're happy that they gave us the funds, and so we'll be doing it once again if they open the program back up this year, which we anticipate that they will.
Can I get a motion from Lee? There's seconded from Greg. Questions? How many vehicles would the 52.5 be used toward?
Yeah, it depends on what vehicle we would buy with them, but with $52,500, we could buy 2 more Bolts, for instance, or we could buy one of the Ford F-150s, for instance. So, roughly equivalent to 1 or 2 vehicles.
Other questions? We're ready to vote? All those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous.
Thank you.
Anything else you'd like to tell us, Terry?
No.
Thank you for coming today and explaining that to us. I kind of hope to have our new transportation planning, what's the exact title? The person that's going to replace Dwight after Dwight's retirement, and he's already started, that's Frank Doldo. But apparently he had a pretty important meeting he had to attend simultaneously, so we'll hope to see him maybe at our next meeting. Lee?
Just clarification, does that position work under social services?
Historically, it has, and with this transition in staffing, it's going to be working under the planning department.
And part of that's because of the funding stream that covers the position, is that correct?
I think in more close proximity to the planning function, ITC, TC, yeah.
Thanks.
It came out of planning originally, then was moved over to DSS, and now it's moving back to planning.
Jack?
Well, I see Jeff Smith's name's up there. Morning, Jeff. Oh, I'm sorry, Deborah's got a question.
Yeah, I just wanted to tell everybody I had an opportunity to meet Mr. Doldo virtually at a meeting with TCAT, and he is really impressive. I don't know how you managed to land that fish, Lisa, but this guy, I mean, he was in a pretty stressful meeting in terms of people being concerned about certain issues. He was so chill. so reassuring, so in command of the subject matter, and he, in a very short time, seems to have established a really good working relationship with Scott Vanderpool at TCAT. So I'm very excited about the future with this guy, and I just wanted
think-
you all to know.
I think we were lucky. He comes from Jefferson County, the Watertown area, where he had a similar position, but apparently the way it was funded, the funding dried up, and so his job kind of went away up there. And he was able to start within a couple of weeks after we selected him for the committee, the interview committee, and then Lisa, of course.
So, yay us.
How are you this morning, Jeff?
Doing fine. You got to love those North Country transplants.
I remember one, particularly he's been with us for a while.
Yeah. I really don't have anything to report today. I would say the storm was a little over forecast. I think everyone's aware of that. The second day was a little worse than the first day that was expected, but it was a lot of wind that created drifting and nuisance kind of maintenance. But overall, I think we fared well, and I think that's kind of the feeling generally throughout, is that it was we were expecting more. I know east of 81 they did get a lot more snow than we did. The North Country still had a lot of snow, so we just kind of, I guess, escaped it in a way. It didn't come over our way, which is good. And if they're ever going to forecast and be wrong, I'd rather they wrong in that direction than the other. So everything's good here. We're working on, getting to, trying to get into the spring mode of things. But that's all I had for today.
Jeff, do you have vacancies? How are you in your recruiting of employees?
We do have vacancies. We are working with HR and trying to get them filled. Our applicant pool is very, very low. If we have any, we've had in the engineering side, we were very fortunate to recently fill one position. We still have one opening. When we do look to fill those, we cast a wide net and open it up between all the titles in the engineering group, just to see, and then we could maybe finance up and down the scale. And we really don't get any applicants. It's very, very low. And we have one now presently that we're trying to fill, and we will be looking to fill our senior, our civil engineer, John Weber he was telling me this morning about June 1st. So very soon we're going to have two, and we've been looking throughout over the last year, I would say, and have had next to very, very low applicant, if any, for various titles on that side. On our MEO, HEO side, our CDL program has helped us to fill any vacancies we have over there. We are getting a few more applicants in that area. We recently advertised, and we did have 4 or 5 applicants, which is more than what we've had over the last couple of years. So in some areas it is improving. I do see some improvement there. But in the engineering group, it's still very, very bleak, unfortunately.
Randy?
Yes, hello, Jeff. I know soil and water had the same issue, and so they just couldn't get applicants for their engineer. So they ended up sharing with Tioga County, one engineer, and then they put another engineering group on retainer just to back them up, just to share that information with you. I was just curious, how was your salt supply this year?
We just got we order from the state. We've purchased from state contract. We put in an order of 7,000 tons, and it's a requirement of the contract to purchase at least 70% of that. And our last order got us up over that, or we got to the 70% mark. I was told by Nick Ensign, the deputy, he let me know that. So I'm aware of that. And so we're already at 70%, and we still would, it's an annual, so we still have to get through what might come in the fall. So I would say we're pretty good. I think a lot of people feel like we've had a very open winter, which I think temperature-wise we've had, but we still have had a fair amount of some what I call nuisance blowing of snow, drifting, some icing, some it's sometimes and I live close to kind of the Ithaca Valley, and it's in the weather in this area. It can be a lot different up in, as you know, Randy, Newfield, or out in the Dryden, some of the higher elevations, sometimes up in Lansing, Groton. There's a lot of different little microclimates within the county, and they do force us to get out there and maintain the roads.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else for Jeff? Oh, Deborah.
Yeah, this isn't just specifically for Jeff, but I'm really glad Randy brought up the issue that Soil and Water had getting an engineer. They spent 2 or 3 years trying really hard. I think if I'm hearing that Soil and Water can't get engineers, Highway can't get engineers. I mean, we have engineers in various places throughout the county. If everyone's having a problem with that, that might be something that the salary level and our competitiveness as an employer for engineers and similar professionals might be something that we target for the budget process, and BCP could work with Ruby and county administration and any other departments that have this problem, and maybe that's something we should be targeting.
Wondering if that's going to be identified in the compensation study.
Don't know off the top of my head. As Ruby warned us, the compensation study didn't provide an indication that across the board we needed to necessarily raise salaries, but there are targeted areas, and if this is one, I mean, engineering is a pretty key part of a lot of what we do, so that might be something we want to consider.
It helped thinking back when I was chairing the IDA and mold flow folks came and built a building up on Trip Hammer, I guess. And the reason they selected to build here at that time was because they wanted to be near the engineering school at Cornell. They thought they would be able to attract engineers. Sadly, they weren't able to.
They could have gotten a good veterinarian, though.
So I guess it may be salary, it may be opportunity, it may be what we're looking for. I don't know if there's probably a zillion going into computer engineering and probably not so many into civil engineering, would be my guess. I don't know for sure. But maybe we have to think about recruiting at Clarkson or other places as well.
Good idea. Thank you, Mike.
Hey, Jeff, thanks a lot.
Thank you, everyone.
Roxanne's here.
I'm here. Good morning.
Morning.
I just have a few things to go over, and then, if anybody has any questions. On March 1st, we had our town hall. Mike Lane and Rich John attended that, along with some of the airport tenants as well. There's over 30 people there. It was a great attendance there. When people come in, they initially, have a look that you're like, oh, what questions are you going to get asked? But by the end of it, I think everybody really then understood, were appreciative of the town hall meeting, took a lot of the information, and said that they were going to go and share that. And the basic bottom line is, try Ithaca. That's what we're trying to get across to the community members of, try Ithaca, try to fly out of Ithaca, and what that will do to help. So thanks to Mike and Rich for attending. We appreciated that and the support. So we're hoping to do more of these in the future. Mike had even suggested we do some downtown. I've talked to Greg Mezey, just in passing, and this may be some type of presentation at some time in the near future that we do for, maybe F&I or for the legislature, at a meeting. I think it would be beneficial, just kind of see what we're doing here and what we're trying to achieve moving forward. Also upcoming on September 17th, we are going to bring back Airport Day and the Runway 5K. We've had so many people asking about that. It's a Sunday.
Again, please. Say the date again.
Sunday, September 17th.
Thank you.
Yep. And it's going to coincide.
Is the Flying Club going to do a pancake breakfast?
Yep. I was just going to say that's going to be part of the East Hill Flying Club's breakfast. You can't beat that. We're going to have, we're trying to get some static displays. I'm sure Crossroads the Clown will be reached out to. That's always a big hit, although my daughter's petrified of clowns, so that's another story. But yeah, so we're looking forward to that. It's a great event. And again, getting our name out there, getting the public involved, people absolutely love it. So, keep you updated as things move forward on that. But it looks like a good event, and let's all hope for good weather. I also just want to give a kudos to my team here for the weather. I laugh when Josh always says at the airport, 1 inch of snow to them is the same as 2 feet. We can't have any contaminant really on the airfield. So they're out there, whether we're getting a dusting or, as he said, more. They were here throughout the overnight. We remained open. The airport did not close during this event. We have had a lot of issues this winter too. I think Jeff had mentioned with more of the icing, which at the airport we can't use salt. So there's other product that we do use. So that becomes even more difficult, because we can't use sand or can't use salt on the airfield. But they did a great job. We remained open. So kudos to them, and kudos, Jeff, to your team too. It's not an easy job. And that's all I have.
Roxanne, I think you went to a conference. How did that go?
The conference went great. We went down to Hershey, had a couple of meetings, seminars that went over funding from the FAA, stuff that I already knew, but some additional information they're going to be providing in the future on how, projects are rated and how you can get additional grants. So that's something I met with Tom Horth on to look at. Are there any other projects that we can put in for additional funding, for additional grant money coming up that would help? And it's just always looking for opportunities there.
But I do want to thank you again for the town hall, and I do think the people really appreciated that. I was thinking maybe another opportunity might be somewhere on Cornell campus sometime in the future.
Absolutely, and there's members we have a small committee of the Air Service Board that are doing these as well, and they're going to continue to do them to community groups, just to try to keep the names out there, and the information about Ithaca out there. So any group that you have, or if there's any, opportunity that any of you know, let me know. And if I'm not available to attend to do the presentation, somebody from the Air Service Board committee would be happy to as well.
Greg.
Yeah, thanks, Roxanne. Yeah, Heather McDaniel did a presentation with Josh and a tour to the Strategic Tourism Planning Board. We had one of our meetings up there, and that was really helpful. And I think that was the same presentation as the town hall, plus or minus. Yeah.
And we're tweaking it some, as we go and realize there's some information that people are wanting. So we're tweaking the presentation, but it's the same one. Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a great presentation, and I think the willingness of everybody to help get the word out there is admirable. So appreciate everybody's efforts there.
Randy.
Hi, Roxanne. How does the parking revenue work up there? Does all the revenue from parking come to the county, or?
So what we have is a management contract. So it's basically they need to cover their expenses, and then we get the remainder less $1,000 management fee. So of course, during the pandemic and the reduction of flights, it's been hit or miss. Sometimes we end up having to pay. Revenue from the parking used to be one of our largest revenue generators, but then the pandemic hit and the loss of flights. We're gaining that back and getting some revenue, but it's not at the level that it was. This is also something that'll be going out for RFP this year because the contract expires January of 2024, January 8th, I believe. So that's something on my to-do list of looking over what we did for an RFP in the past and try to adjust that if need be for future revenue.
Now, I know there's long-term and short-term parking. Is your short-term parking typically full? Or I have a friend of mine who hates to park way out there in the middle of the winter, so I'm just he just complained about it, so I'm sharing it, so.
Yeah, usually there's spots open in short term. It is slightly more expensive than long term. But usually, and if not, there's long-term slots open fairly close to the short-term lot.
Roxanne, as long as you're talking about the parking there, went out of the short-term lot, and they have a pay machine that only takes credit cards or debit cards. And I was going out, and I had a dollar bill to pay my thing, and there's no place to put money into it. And the other side that had a guard in it, or a attendant, I should say, was blocked off with cones. He had to make me back up, open the cones, and then come around by the other attendant stop in order to take my dollar. I just thought that was, I think they need a better machine if they want to use a machine.
Yep, and that's something we can put in the RFP, and I'll ask too why, because normally there would either be signage if somebody wasn't there, or to direct you with cash to the booth. It would seem to make sense to me. But
yeah.
I'll check with the parking company on that.
I just thought I'd tell you my experience.
Yep,
Okay.
thank you.
Anything else for Roxanne?
Just comment that the publicity and coverage in the local media and the town halls and the airport issues have been fairly extensive and very, I think, positive toward the efforts that are being made there.
Thanks, Lee.
Well, I think Arel's up next. Arel, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. How are all of you?
Great. How are you doing?
Good, good. I don't have very much to report as compared to what I presented last month. We are continuing with the green facilities phase 1 project. The most exciting part is the geothermal system that will be going in here at the Public Works facility. I reported last month that we did the test well, the contractor did. We got results of the test well, which confirmed the design of 48 we're going to have to do wells, 48 wells, 490 feet in depth, and it will take up the majority of the employee parking lot. And so they're going to start with the drilling of the wells a week from this Monday, so March 27th, which will basically have the parking lot closed for probably 3 to 4 months for all the work, not only the drilling, but then the piping and then the restoration of the parking lot. In the meantime, we've made arrangements with the church across the street to allow parking of our employees there. We've done it before. They've been very gracious in the past and now to allow us to park there. And so that's worked out really well. The other projects, there's been really very little movement at the mental health building. We're doing, it's called a variable refrigerant flow, where we're replacing heat pumps. And so we did, the contractor did some investigations. They're going to go finalize designs and then share them with us. But there's really no work will be occurring probably for the next month and a half or so there. Aside from that, on the personnel side, I've reported our vacancies. We currently have 3 active vacancies. We have the project manager 2 for facilities that we've had vacant. We've advertised for over 3 months now with no applicants for that. And I personally feel, I told Lisa that has a lot to do with the compensation. We just are not competitive enough for that position. And then the other 2 are our maintenance staff trades, an electrician vacancy and an HVAC systems technician vacancy that been vacant for a month. We've had 1 applicant for each of those. not the strongest, but we've interviewed 2 applicants so far, and hoping to get more applicants in the coming weeks. And that's all I have to report.
I did have a question. Last year, I know you went for the cleaning staff, you went to doing daytime cleaning, and I wonder how that's been going.
Actually, that has gone very well. Before we did the change, which would have been year before last, I involved our cleaning staff first, as you know, to propose the idea and the benefits in doing so. Met with all the departments that would be affected. The majority of them were very positive about the change. A few had concerns because the cleaners in their buildings only work nights. So they were concerned that moving the cleaners to days, there may be a decrease in the quality of cleaning services provided. However, now that we've done it for over a year now, it's worked well. Both the departments and our customers have been very pleased. And also, I think an important part, at least for our department, is that morale has improved by having all the cleaners working a day shift and the opportunities that provides them to interact with each other, really work around other county employees and feel a part of the department, whereas when they're working nights, they felt kind of on their own. So no, that's been very positive. It's also been positive as far as when we are short, either through vacations or employees that are out sick, it gives us more flexibility in being able to distribute cleaning staff to buildings to cover for that. And also for snow removal. When we have snow removal, the cleaners, since they're coming early, are the ones that are cleaning around the buildings, entrances and exits. We have more cleaners to help with that effort. Even though we haven't had as much snow this year, but that's always been a priority for all our staff, is snow removal.
I'm glad to hear that. I see lots of salt, days that it's icy. That's good.
Yes.
Randy.
Yeah, Rel. I think we're going to get to this anyways, but I know you and I have talked about the Red House in the Baker Building, and I don't want to put you on the spot here, but and Greg brought up the status of demolition and of the Baker Building. And you and I talked about, is that the wise thing to do? And and maybe it is, and I'll live with either one. But I think I'd like to know your position on the Red House, whether the county should keep it and renovate it. And I'd also like to hear your thoughts on the Baker Building as well. So.
Okay. I know that there were some emails over the past couple of days from, I guess, a concerned neighbor to the Red House expressing concerns whether the heat was working or not at the Red House. And so I responded to Rich, but also to Deborah, which I think was circulated to all legislators, to let all of you know, which I've reported in the past, that we are maintaining at a minimum level the Red House. We are running the heat. It's set at 60 degrees. When I've checked it myself personally, the last couple of weeks, yesterday included, that's where I drafted that email, it was right at 60 degrees. But our maintenance staff check the building weekly. Now I'm asking them to do it twice a week, especially when it's colder weather. And the building is just as it was when we purchased it, except cleaner inside. I think those of you who walked it in the past, we had furniture and junk all over. We cleaned it prior to the last walkthrough, and it remains that way. We have no active leaks, no rodents, no interior deterioration. The only deterioration that I'm concerned about, I've expressed before, is the exterior, the painting. The paint is peeling. It was peeling when we purchased it, although it's been 3 years now. So it's getting worse. And so I've indicated that if the county is planning to hold on to the building, that we should address that, at least the exterior. My opinion, and I've shared that with committee, before is that I don't think that's the best place for government offices, for county offices. It was built and designed as a house, and for us to convert it for public use is going to be expensive to do. Not impossible, it's doable, but I just think that we would be spending a lot more money to make those improvements and really restore the house on the exterior. All the historic features of that would be more costly than if we were to renovate an existing building. And so I think what I had indicated that is if the legislature wants to provide government space on that block, even though we've already approved the deconstruction of the Baker building, which I'm moving forward on doing that would be a better building to renovate. It would allow us to expand it. It's a larger building. The Red House is 3,880 square feet. The Baker Dental Building is 11,038 square feet. So it's 3 times the space, and we could actually increase the amount of space on the second floor. It's a partial second floor. We can make it a full second floor. And so that's what I've indicated before. However, I am moving forward with the deconstruction. The reason the deconstruction is taking longer is that we're having challenges in getting the contractor to come in and do that. It took a long time for them to confirm the costs, and the costs have gone up. And so now at this point, since the costs have exceeded our threshold for moving forward, we have to do it what we call a cooperative procurement. And so that's what we've been working on with the contractor to establish an agreement through a cooperative procurement and to start the abatement and deconstruction in spring in order to be complete prior to when INHS would start their project, which the last time we met about a month ago, they said would be October of this year. So we want to make sure that our portion is done before they start the construction and use of staging on the west portion of our property.
Go ahead, Randy.
Appreciate that. And I think Greg and I agree on this. When we first got legislature, we just want to see something move forward and things to happen, right? So and it may be a decision needs to be made that we're going to build something on that lot or not. I mean, I don't know, and maybe that's the decision, right? And if we're not, then let's knock it down and move forward. I personally like the idea of having a building on that lot, but I think maybe that's the decision. If that decision is a no, then there's no reason to renovate that building. So that's my thought.
Deborah.
Yeah, I just, for the benefit of people who weren't here at the time, the decision to go ahead with deconstruction of that building was the result of the fact that it leaks like a sieve. And the basement of that structure, I believe, was just rotting away and inundated with water. So although the idea of if we had to choose between which building we would try to renovate and convert to government use, it would make more sense to move forward with the larger building. I think given the condition of that building, it would be extremely expensive, and I just personally don't see a lot of purpose to it.
What are your thoughts on that, Arel? Has the building been deteriorated to the point where it's not worth doing anything?
Well,
I'm not sure it's fair to make Arel.
yeah. I mean, all I can say is that if you compare both buildings, the Red House and the Baker Dental Building, the Baker Dental Building has deteriorated substantially since we purchased it. What happened is that since when the building was first purchased, or at least I was told that there was never the intention for the county to make improvements to the building, that we were going to deconstruct it. Because typically what we would do if we were going to either renovate a building prior to purchase, we'd do an extensive building condition assessment to determine, the condition of all systems, roofing systems, HVAC, all of that. That was never done because the plan had been to demolish the building. However, shortly thereafter, the previous owners never disclosed that there were issues with the roof. The roof started leaking shortly thereafter. We brought in a contractor to do work on the roof, and they indicated that they had provided a few quotes to the prior owners, which included replacing the roof. It was beyond repair. So the roof, as many of you've seen, and it's mostly the western portion. The back portion is, leaking, and the deck, the metal deck, is rusted. So, and there are units on the roof which, are putting weight on that metal deck. So it's deteriorating, and so the question that I had posed to our previous county administrator was, do we want to invest money to replace the roof? And the decision was no. I mean, if we're not going to keep the building, why make these, investments of around $150,000 to $200,000? And so the decision was no. So we tried to prevent and mitigate the roof leaking as best we could, but we really couldn't do much better, and it's still leaking. So if the decision is changed to occupy or put county offices on that block, all I'm saying is that building, the Baker Dental building, can be renovated and allow more space. It was designed as a commercial building to begin with, so code-wise there are some code improvements we're required to do, but it's a more solid structures, the foundations and such. Once we take care of the leak, we could mitigate all the other things, but it'd be more space. So all I'm saying is that if there's serious consideration of providing space on that block for county offices, that would be one that would lend itself to providing more space, but also to making improvements that would not require as extensive work at, as cost per square foot, as I'm saying, the Red House. Cost per square foot for the Red House would be higher than cost per square foot at the Baker Dental building. I personally don't agree. I don't feel that that's the best building or to restore. The Baker Dental building. And so it's a tough question to answer. As an engineer, we can make anything work. I just don't think it's worth it.
Thank you.
Ralph, thanks for letting us put you on the spot on that.
Mike, Lisa has her hand.
Lisa.
And I just wanted to confirm at the close of those remarks that the resolution by the legislature is still in effect to deconstruct the dental building, and we are still proceeding with that. So
Right.
Just wanted to make sure that everyone was aware of that.
I won't comment. That was the no vote.
That's true.
Anything else that you want to talk to us about, Ralph?
Well, yeah, I think, is Terry still there? Yeah, so Terry and I meet bi-weekly with Johnson Controls as far as progress of the Green Facilities Phase 1 project. And so I suggested, and Terry agreed, that it was a great idea that for the April F&I committee meeting that we could report more formally on the progress update of the Green Facilities project with slides and such to the committee, being that it's Earth Day and such in April. So I just wanted to let you know that's our plan, to take a little more time to let the committee know what the county is getting, benefiting from the investment that we've made so far in energy improvements.
Not on camera, but I see Terry nodding yes.
That's all I have, unless there are any additional comments regarding downtown facilities.
Well, we're going to talk a little bit more about that, and I just wanted to get your report, give you that opportunity first. Lisa, I neglected to ask you when you were reporting. It came to my attention that the earmarks that we submitted to our congressional representatives I don't think they went through this committee, and I understand that there were flyers prepared about them that were sent to the congressional people. I wondered when this committee was going to get an opportunity to look at those.
I'd be happy to share them with you. I apologize for the oversight. They were made on request because we had two members of the legislature that were going to the NACO conference, and so it was in order to share in their advocacy efforts at NACO. But I'd be happy to share them with this committee.
They were done out of administration?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd certainly like to see them. I understand that the center of government flyer had the picture of that elevation that was done a couple or 3 years ago at private expense to lobby for a center of government building. And we certainly haven't made any decision about whether to build or that building, what it's going to look like if we did. And so that's got me a little bit surprised. Greg?
Well, as somebody who sat in Senator Gillibrand's office and had that conversation around that flyer with our chair, Shauna, there was, again, it was a conceptual conversation like we've had here, right? This is the conversation that's being had at the legislature at the moment. These are some of the things that it possibly could be. This is what we've talked about in the past. There was no representation that a decision had been made to move forward. You know, this was only if there's opportunity, if there's funds available, for a green facility or very specific things within a new center of government, what those funds availability might be for, how we could work that into our conversation and decision making. And if there is an opportunity to help jumpstart the process with state or federal funding, how we could leverage that to move a conversation forward to a decision. So I don't want anybody to be, we weren't out there shopping some design and some grand plan that was made in a back room. It was a theoretical, here's the conversation, here's where we've been, and I don't think there was any representation on that document of decisions made or final plans or anything like that.
I just think, Greg, that when there's a request for earmarks or something like that to our elected representatives, that it should be coming through a committee at the least, and probably through the whole legislature to get a stamp of approval on it. Deb?
Yeah, harking back to that plan, the way it was presented, I didn't get the sense that there was ever a legislative consensus about, oh, that's a great plan. It was just an example of what an L-shaped building on that corner might look like. And I personally think that even when we finally move forward on this, we should be asking for a design that nods to the historic district that it would be built in, and that would perhaps more closely resemble the facade of the courthouse. I mean, that would be certainly a lot more fitting than, a marble and glass flat front kind of building that I know some of us were kind of like, ick. So I think we're a long way from having a plan, and what I don't want to see is us, pushing against moving forward to get a plan because we didn't like this example of what a plan might look like in the past.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. Rel, I need to ask you a question, too. I forgot. Been totally appalled by the recent increase in graffiti on county buildings, particularly the legal building that we bought on Tioga Street. I see graffiti on Building C and other places, and I noticed even over on the Commons that someone was trying to get it cleaned off on the old Savings Bank building that TC3 owns, TC3 Foundation owns. Any thoughts on what we can do to try to slow down that kind of miscreant activity? Have we notified police? Are we looking at camera footage, things like that?
Yeah. Yes, and I know that Alan and I got an email from Lisa. It's been several weeks now, and so I brought it up over a month ago to our staff about, painting, and so they're waiting for, I guess, warmer weather to paint over or paint at least the professional building and remove graffiti at some of like Building C. We have shared footage in the past with the law enforcement, and in a few buildings, we've actually had good footage of the individuals and the perpetrators, but they've not really done anything about it. And so that, I know that Alan shared with Lisa, but that the law enforcement really wasn't doing anything to pursue those issues, even though we do report them. So doesn't seem to be much of a deterrent to those that are putting graffiti in our buildings. Where we can, we put something on the building, on the paint, so that it's easier to remove. It's much, we don't have it on the brick on the professional building. That's tougher to remove when you've got brick to do that. So our plan there is to paint over it at the professional building, and actually all three sides, at least not the front, but all the other sides of the professional law building have graffiti on it. So the plan is to get in there and paint that. We would have to do most of that either on a weekend or off hours because of the vehicles that park close to at least the north side of the professional law building. But yes, I agree that we've seen an uptick of that. And we're doing what we can to at least alert law enforcement about it, but there doesn't seem to be a deterrent so that it won't continue.
Let me talk with Shauna about perhaps we need a letter to the mayor and the police chief and saying we really like to see something stepped up about that.
Okay.
Greg.
I mean, if these sides of buildings are being treated as good canvas for, is there an opportunity to look at public art or Ithaca murals or something like that so that there's not the attractive nuisance? My only fear is that every time you go to repaint it and you clean it off, you just make it easier to do again. I think we have an organization that does a lot with blank space in our community to make it more visually appealing. And if some of these buildings' fate is in question, maybe it's a temporary opportunity for a young budding artist to create something interesting for the community to look at for a while. I guess I'm kind of opposed to just painting over brick because you have to keep painting over brick, and it's not something that's easily maintained. So maybe there's an opportunity to do something on a more semi-permanent that has sort of a community art benefit or community impact, other than just, we're just chasing graffiti and we're going to just keep creating more opportunity. Every time we clean it, every time we paint it, we're just welcoming folks back to do it. It's like a swimming pool without a gate. People are going to jump in.
And that's a good point, because the old library, remember, prior to demolition for many years, we would get, it would always get tagged with graffiti, especially the drum on the corner. And so we actually worked with the group. They were out of the library, and they brought in a graffiti artist and did it. And for whatever reason, there's some honor and respect between graffiti art. So once they do that, others won't tag the building. And so, yeah, that was great. It was beautiful. So that's something that is worth considering. I know that the committee years ago, F&I actually approved allowing, at least for the old library. So if that's something that is important to this committee, if you let us know, we can work with the group and see if there's interest in doing that at any of these buildings.
I have no problem with talking about it. I just, I'm having a hard time visualizing how it would be done on a building like that, especially if we're going to eventually deconstruct that building.
Maybe
Right.
something with the scales of justice, you know. Could really play off the law building close to the courthouse. I mean, I think people would get creative. Might as well give them the opportunity.
Well,
I agree.
frankly, I'm worried about some of our other buildings getting attacked, and maybe even the Red House. And we don't want to see that happen. And we'd be blamed for it.
Right. I mean, they haven't done the Red House. They have tacked the Baker Dental building, if not very much, and we've been able to paint over those. It's tough when they hit the main court, any of the masonry, building, stone and masonry. Those are tough to remove that. You know, sandblasting is the best. I mean, that's the other option for the professional building is to sandblast it. It's more expensive because I don't like painting, and Greg is correct in that once you paint it, you've got to then maintain it. But it's always a clean canvas for graffiti artists.
Maybe people just graffiti the ugly buildings.
Yeah. Correct.
Well, thank you. I'm sorry I didn't bring that up before.
We just
but
need to
I thought
build
we should
better
talk
looking
about it.
buildings.
So, folks, what do we want to say more about the Red House at this point and the Baker Building? Randy?
We need to move forward with it. Is it, I think, is it Susan? Sue mentioned there are people who are interested in buying it. But I think that if those are presented to us, we wouldn't know what to do with them. We need to, if we're going to sell it, we need to set the parameters. We need to be very specific about what it is that we're selling, and then let people make proposals based on that. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to just look at them and know what to do. So, my point is parking's a big deal. We want to maintain as much parking as we can, and we need to lay out what it is that they have the potential to buy versus us getting proposals and then having to go back and forth on what it is. So that's my thought.
Eb?
I take your point, Randy, but I think that you have to understand that this is kind of a circular problem because what you've got is an extremely unique commodity, and you have to know what your market is for that before you can set your parameters for what you're willing to sell for. So I think the place to start is probably to get a sense from Susan and Historic Ithaca and other interested community members of what the range of offers and interest actually is.
Well, we've had discussions before. I hope we're not going to sell it for $1. We've talked about $300,000, which is the value we've been using for this building all along. We're hearing that folks want to that are interested in it, and they want to tour it and see what the basement looks like. Being a real estate attorney, I'm of two minds on that. Often the purchase contract comes first, contingent on a structural inspection that they want to see whether you want to work on it or not. But if, I take your point, Randy, about certainly if we want to do a ground lease, for example, or if we want to only sell the footprint of the building, for example, I think we do need to make that decision, and maybe we need to sit down with whoever's going to be the attorney for the real estate sale. I don't know whether it's going to be Bill or someone he would work with. I know they've done that before, had real estate attorneys, and sit down and work out what the parameters of the sale would be. So maybe we should have a meeting with this group with that attorney. That's my suggestion. Okay. Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, Mike, I definitely agree with the normal sort of course of the transaction. I think that makes sense. But one of the things that, we're seeing a lot more of lately is sellers doing a structural inspection and having that available to the buyers as information, one, to keep the process moving forward so that you can eliminate any of those type of contingencies or variables. So I would not be opposed as a committee to authorize a structural inspection that is done not by, you know, our folks, but by an independent person, somebody with, and Arel, please don't take this personally, but somebody who's not been involved in the process, right?
Only because of public perception
yeah.
of the trustworthiness of the results.
Exactly. To trust the results and make sure that there's no, you know, opinion or weight put in anything. I think that for us to really make a decision is a first step, because that would weigh, do we really want to keep it or do we want to sell it? And I think either way, we could have that available to anybody who would be, you know, that would be part of our presentation of saying, here's the inspection, here's our sort of, you know, what we perceive the value to be, and, you know, open that dialogue up. I would be in favor of that, just so we know what we're working with. And, you know, that's probably a couple, you know, max a couple $1,000. I mean, that's like crazy money, but it likely would cost us that anyway, so.
And that would be a good first step for a lot of the processes that have been discussed here.
Here's my problem with that, Greg. My problem is that once we have it done at our cost, and whatever engineer we hire, even though it's some independent, is still working for us, not working for the buyer. And if there turn out to be latent defects or other things that we're not aware of, or that are missed by our inspector, then we could still be out there for potential liability.
Don't you think the attorneys could work that out in the contract language?
And it could still be a
I mean, I'm not an attorney, but
contingent
I've
offer.
seen enough of them that.
No,
I mean, I guess I would.
I just, I guess I shouldn't try to be an attorney on this, but I always advise my buying clients to get their own inspection. So
And we could.
The inspector is working for them.
And they can still do that, Mike, but we need to have some preliminary information, again, because we've got a unique commodity, a building that has sat empty for 4 years, that everybody, there's a swirl of rumors about what condition it's in. We need to quell some of that.
Well, my feeling is the folks who think that they want to buy this building, we need to see the seriousness of an offer. And that can be contingent on their having a structural done. If the committee feels we ought to do a structural, I suppose we can do that, but that's not something I would want to do, since we've already done one.
I'd like to make a motion that we do a structural, hire a professional to do a structural analysis of it.
I would second that.
Been moved and seconded. Is there discussion? Lisa?
I wanted to ask Arel, because I believe that there has been some preliminary work done on this topic. So Arel, could you speak to that?
You're on mute, Arel.
You're on mute.
You'd probably like to stay there.
I apologize. Yes, I was raising my hand to let the committee know that as well. 4.5 months ago, actually, I had engineering firm, Tetra Tech, they're a large national engineering architectural firm, do a preliminary limited visual structural inspection. And so I shared the results of those, mostly photographs, but verbally indicated what they found. And the focus was really basement and that structure for the first floor. We didn't go through the rest of the building. Really, that was the worst. So we could do a more extensive one, but I deliberately had a third party come in. My background is civil engineering structural, but I realized that the perception would be different if the county did it themselves. So we've done a limited visual structural. It's not an extensive one. We could do that, but I just want to at least make the committee aware of that. I can circulate the full report. I think the last time I just circulated summary of findings and photographs, and that was probably 3-4 months ago.
And could we ask them to expand that to a full written report?
Yep. And they put language in there that would, indicate that, it's not thorough, because, I mean, it could get very costly if you're doing destructive type testing where you're boring and things like that. This was visual, but we can do a more extensive one. But there is language, kind of some sort of, not a disclaimer, but indicating that, they're not going to pick up everything unless we really tear into the building quite a bit to cover, to provide some cover to the county.
Would that satisfy you folks if we had that expanded? Since it's already been started?
Expanded in what way, Mike? I mean, expanded in
To be a
just
full structural report,
a full structural report with the testing that needs to be.
not just a visual report.
That would satisfy me, yes.
Any idea what it's going to cost us, Arel?
I'm thinking, depending on, I would limit the number of tests that we would perform because the building is fairly homogeneous. I would think it's probably in the $3,000 to $5,000.
Money well spent.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Deb.
No, I just think it's money well spent.
Yeah, I have the funds available to do these types of studies, so I would not need a funding or contingency or resolution to do that.
We aren't talking about asking them to do a phase 1 or phase 2 environmental assessment, are we? Okay.
No, nor a building condition assessment. The focus would be just structural. We're not looking at all the systems and things, just structure.
Okay, so should we go ahead and vote on that? All those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. All right, anything else on, let's talk a little bit more about the Baker building, because if there was any intention of not to have it deconstructed or to delay that, we probably ought to tell our staff that fairly soon. And I'm just wondering what the committee wants to do.
I brought that up with Arel because we were sort of touring the properties and stuff. I think we should move forward and knock it down.
I'm in.
Second. Okay, well, that's just, I don't think we have to do anything.
No, because that's pretty much where we start.
Unless you want me to vote against it again, but that's all right. Okay. I'd like to talk a little bit more about the 300 block of Tioga Street, the two buildings there, and get a better sense of the committee on those. We toured them. We had a lot of over-the-shoulder discussion while we were walking through them about, where we ought to be going with those. I, for one, was, I guess, pleasantly surprised at the structural condition of the bank building, although the question came up about the windows, and we were going to ask Arel about that, whether he'd had a chance to investigate those anymore. And I think we sort of had a feeling about the legal building that it hadn't been very well maintained in the last few years, and it did not look particularly so that it might be a building that we would want to move any of our offices into. But maybe we do with the bank building, and I just kind of wondered what folks think about that? Randy?
Part of it is timing. If we later this year move forward, for example, with the Center of Government building, it's going to take 3 years, 4 years, 5 years for it to happen, and we have space needs now. So that's, and I don't know, what the design of the building would look like, or if we could build around it, or if you knock it down, or if we could incorporate it in. I have no idea on any of those types of things with the bank building. I think it makes sense to fairly soon knock the law building down, the brick building down. I think that would be a good move fairly quickly. But
We're talking deconstruction, right?
Deconstruction, yeah.
Well, Randy, could we please use that term?
Yes,
Thanks.
deconstruct it. But the bank building looks like it could be utilized in the interim for certain functions, so that's my thought.
Deb?
Yeah, I agree that it's going to be like, I don't know, Tetris, because we've got to move our people out of the courthouse, and we don't completely have control over when we have to do that. It scares me when people start talking about building a new building around or incorporating that building, because I think if we want to build something that's a good addition to the community, that building's going to have to come down, because we're going to want some sort of homogeneous facade and presentation. But I guess it makes sense that we would move people there temporarily. But I guess one of the things we need to be considering when we do that is, what is it going to cost to make that building temporarily a good space for our staff that we put there? I mean, we have to make it ADA compliant if it is not already. We have to wire it for IT. I don't know what the heck else we have to do. I guess another thing that we're going to have to ask Arel and maybe Terry, because of the green facilities piece, what that's going to cost. I think that's an important piece for us to know.
What else? Greg?
Yeah, I would love to see a resolution at the next F&I that when that law building is vacant, that we deconstruct it or put that out to bid. I know the term deconstruction has also been criticized, so why we use it in the term that we've sort of defined a strategic demolition of sorts, where we can save as many elements as possible, but not a full deconstruction for reconstruction. Because I know that came under scrutiny at the last meeting. Deborah, do you have something?
Yeah, I do think, I've really been confused about this deconstruction concept. I understand that there are building elements that people think are valuable and should be preserved. When we do a deconstruction like this, I don't know if Lisa or Raul or somebody else could answer this question. Do we have somebody come in, like, I don't know, Finger Lakes Reuse or Historic Ithaca, or does somebody come in and help us pinpoint which elements we need to be saving and what's going to get junked?
Raul, I know you've worked with folks like that.
Yes, we actually did that months ago, last year with Historic Ithaca. There's significant elements of arm of Historic Ithaca and Finger Lakes Reuse. So we had walkthroughs with them. They went through. We kept an inventory of items and things that they were interested in the Baker Dental building, and then they came through and took those elements of the building components that they were interested in. Some things they indicated that, it would either be more difficult for resale or reuse. And so, yeah, this is more of a light deconstruction. We're not dismantling the building, piece by piece. That would be much more costly, but that's not what we're doing. So they've at least salvaged both groups, those things that they're interested in. Now, the initial list was more comprehensive that they were planning to take. They didn't take everything that was in the building. I think I indicated at the time some elements like windows that have either asbestos or PCB caulking around it would be more costly for us to abate, for them to remove it. So those things, it didn't make sense that the county would spend more money to abate so that it could be removed or salvaged, unless it was something of great value, which isn't. Those windows are all single pane. There's nothing of much significance there. So, I mean, that we have worked with them. We've not done a full deconstruction of a building in the 29 years I've been here. We did when we did the health department, if you may remember, Mike, we did a deconstruction because we gutted the interior of the existing building. We left the shell. So we did a deconstruction of that where we did salvage and reuse as much as possible, like carpeting. That was, we had dumpsters and we would recycle the carpeting. We recycled a lot of the ceiling tiles, the gypsum, and that was required in order for us to obtain the LEED silver certification. And we monitored that as we did the deconstruction with the contractor. They had to keep manage the quantities of each of the materials. That's not what we're planning to do here. Now, the contractor that is planning to do the Baker Dental Building deconstruction, they are going to, they see value as they're demolishing or deconstructing the building for steel, to set the steel aside and to, the masonry and such, to rubblize it and to, use it in place. So they because that's an important value for them as a company to try to reuse or at least leave on site. So what we're planning to do for the foundations is to, because it's mostly concrete foundations, is to rubblize it into small, like less than 4 inches, and put that in the pit rather than haul it. Because to haul it away, it's going to cost them more money. So yeah, we're doing as best we can, but it's not a full deconstruction as you may have heard from some public that addressed the committee a few meetings ago.
Thank you for clarifying that, Raul, because I don't want us to get lectured about greenwashing again.
Okay, thank you.
Expect to be lectured about whatever we do.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's true, Mike.
Thanks, Arel. Arel, how much longer are the tenants allowed to stay in the legal building?
It's a 6-month. They can extend the lease at 6 months durations. The key bank, I asked the facilities manager that conducted the tour, the walkthrough about a month ago. They indicated this summer. Their facility, which I monitor every week or so, is progressing pretty quickly. So they were saying about August, which is about the time that their current lease expires, and then they could extend it 6 months. Now, the professional law building tenants, they wanted the full 2 years, so that expires February of 2024.
Oh, so we've got almost a year on that. So we can't deconstruct it. Even if we pass a resolution, Greg, at our next meeting, it's not going to be until, at the minimum, possibly, unless they leave early, of next February.
That's okay. The ball will at least be moving.
Yeah, it's like planning a trip in advance.
It's great.
You make your hotel reservations.
Lisa, you had your hand up.
Well, I wanted to, those dates are also listed in your timeline on the page 7. Under the second bullet, the resolution authorizing the purchase of those buildings, those key dates where their lease agreements will expire. And I think that the point is well taken, too, that this time period that we're in was seen to be a time for planning, potential design, because very soon we're going to be in the same situation with two more buildings that the county owns that will be vacant, that we will need to be either maintaining or deciding what to do with. So I think having this discussion early is really important.
Yeah, sorry, if I could just finish my comment, if we got sort of sidetracked on the deconstruction. I hear some of my colleagues' comments about the Key Bank building, but I am very hesitant to put something in there or any department in there temporarily, permanently, whatever the case may be. I also think we should keep moving forward on a path. That building will not be sufficient in the long run. It's a temporarily, maybe could get by with some modification, but in the long run, I don't see that the value of that corner is much greater than a two-story style building. I think we should also plan when the tenant is out to deconstruct light, whatever the term du jour is going to be now. We should remove that building from the parcel in which it sits, and keep that process moving, because the cost to move and then the cost to move them out, I don't see it making sense in the long run. And I think if we show the court administrator, I can't remember the correct term.
Office of Court Administration.
Office of Court Administration, that we're moving forward with a plan that buys us some grace in their eyes, is my understanding, and some time, by grace, I mean. So I think that would help. So I personally would like to see a resolution that calls to deconstruct both of those as we define deconstruction.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think in the long term that we're going to be keeping that building. I really would be against that, but I just think that we may find ourselves in a position where we have to use it. And that is why, in order to decide whether we would want to take that step on a temporary basis, one of the factors we'd need to consider is what it would cost us to make it temporarily suitable for occupation by county staff. I think that's a piece we just need to know in case. And I fear, given the way our staff seems to be growing, I fear that we might find ourselves in a position where we have to use it temporarily, no matter how cost efficient or not cost efficient that is. I don't want to be too premature on that building, just because it is usable as opposed to the Wiggins building, which is not.
Sure. I also think we'd be in a better spot to rent space downtown somewhere for a year or two than to move somebody into something and then have to, because if we don't know.
We have to move them twice, Greg. And
if we don't know the exit of that building, that's my only fear and concern, is if we don't know what the next step is after we move somebody in, because when we put a building in that place.
I know, we're going to have to move people.
We're going to have to move them again. So why not move them somewhere more temporary and build the building and not worry about that building? I don't see that building as a logical part of the equation, because we're going to have to move them to build over that anyways. And where do we put them then? Why not just put them there in the beginning and not play around with retrofitting a building for county use that 24 months later is going to be rubbleized?
Well, I see your point, but I think we should have the information just so we can do a cost comparison, because that's the basis on which we should be making decisions.
Yeah, and I think we should look at what cost to rent a space of that size may be.
Sure.
Randy?
Both your points. The cost is really important as to what the benefits are from that. And I think it really is about determining step one, step two, step three. For example, we're going to be knocking some buildings down with this center of government building. Is it Annex C, is that what they call it?
Building C.
Okay. Where Board of Elections is, and that building is going to be knocked down. So we'd have to find space for those people, right? And IT doesn't want to move more than once. Not that they couldn't move more than once, but that's complex and expensive, right? So and it may make sense for, and I realize that corner is really important where the Key Bank building is, but maybe the building incorporates that as the last thing that's knocked down. I don't know. Maybe that's like a park area right in front there or something where, I mean, like a lot of buildings in New York City are that way. They kind of have this little
Plaza.
yeah. So maybe that where I don't know, but just thinking about it. So.
That's interesting, Randy. Go ahead, Lisa.
I just wanted to note, I see Annie's hand on the screen.
Sorry, whose hand? Oh, Ann Corman. Hi, Ann. Go ahead.
Thanks, Mike, for letting me chime in. So, yeah, just having gone over a lot of this stuff the past few years, that is just a reminder, and as you remember, Mike, those are things that we did look at, that one rendering of that we had drawn up of a new center of government, I believe would have left Building C intact to last, because IT is the last department you would want to make a move, just logistically, never mind cost-wise, but logistically trying to make the move, and so that they would be the last ones to move. And under that plan, we had no department was going to have to move temporarily. That as Greg had said about the court, seeing us make motions towards center of government was so we were going to be able to leave the clerk and the DA, intact where they were. And just looking at the number of times the department, never mind cost-wise, but the disruption, which is kind of hard to measure, but the disruption in departments having to move, was an issue. So the way we had looked at it before, nobody was going to have to move temporarily. I don't know if that's changed over time, but at that point, we didn't have to keep moving people around. Thanks.
Thank you, Ann. I don't actually remember any decision about that being made, but thanks for the comment. Okay. So you've asked for a resolution, Greg, for our next meeting. You still want to do that?
I mean, we can take them one at a time if it would make.
Could we please?
Yeah, sure, if it makes Deb feel better. I'm just kidding.
Well,
I hear you. I'm teasing you. You know you're one of my favorites. It makes Randy and Deb feel better. So yeah, if we
I
could take
know,
it.
I'm right up there with hemorrhoids, yeah.
If we could take it one at a time, that would be great.
So what are you asking for?
When the lease is, so whatever the date is of their lease, when their lease terminates, start deconstruction. Gives us plenty of time to plan and get a cost estimate well into the future and put it into the budget before we approve it. And
in the event the tenants decide to leave early, I think we ought to move it up.
Oh, sure.
yeah, we won't hear any objection there.
Could be. Maybe when the building is vacant.
Yeah.
All right, we got a motion, I don't think we need a motion. I
No,
just
we're
think
just
we
gonna
need
put a
to request
resolution.
that we could have a resolution along that line. Lisa, could you help us with that?
So to clarify, one resolution for the two properties, or
Nope.
two separate resolutions?
Two separate.
Okay.
And just the Wiggins building resolution at this time.
Yeah.
We just want one resolution to deal with the Wiggins building, yeah.
So that resolution, that building is slated to vacate in February of 2024. The other one will come up, will vacate,
Sooner.
but we're not going to consider that one.
Not at the moment.
Okay, one resolution.
I mean, I do, sorry if I may, Mike, I apologize. If I heard my colleagues, there was a desire to understand the cost of the bank building to put a,
To make it ADA compliant and
to make it
accommodate our
usable
ITS.
for a county use.
Bring it up to code specifications only, not, or what information, what further clarification do you need, Arel, for that cost estimate?
What would be helpful is if the type of, what departments, most of our departments are office-type buildings, but if there's any unique use of the space, that would affect the code. So I'm just thinking right now out loud, you know, if we had any of the lease spaces, those are all considered offices, so there's no really unique use that would kick in. But let's say if it were more like medical type use, then that would change the use, which I don't see any of the departments that are currently being considered having that type of occupancy. But then if you said, well, you know, just occupy the building as far as the partitioning and offices as is, that would what I would need to know, because I could focus on the required, you know, code improvements, but not really any renovation of the space.
Think for example, the county clerk and the DA.
Yeah, those are all the same type of occupancy. So yeah, I would just say we wouldn't do any improvements as far as offices, you know, creating more offices and things like that. The cost would be really making whatever code ADA improvements with the current code based on, I mean, when the building was occupied, it was a different code. So that would be my focus of whatever cost estimates I would bring forward, but not partitioning and creating more offices, infilling. Like the second floor is about half the total building between first and second is 7,200 square feet. The basement is like 4,000, but that's not a usable basement. It would be just for storage and mechanical space. So you have 7,200 square feet. We would not be, I'm assuming we're not looking at infilling the second floor.
No.
And so as long as I know those parameters, and my focus would be only on the code improvements or, you know, replacement of systems that are deteriorated, like roofing, mechanical, those types of things. From what I saw visually, those things seem to be fairly recent, the mechanicals and also the roof systems. The glass is one that I had concerns over. We would not, unless you're telling me now, whatever improvements we would make, we would want energy efficiency also considered. That would be a big one because the glass is not energy efficient. And
No, because it's temporary. I mean, why would we do that?
Right. So if that's what you're saying, but Michael, no. When we vacated the old library, I was told temporary for 18 months. We had it 18 years. So in my mind, I never really do improvements anymore that are temporary. I feel you put the money because you never know whether it is in fact going to be temporary.
I think, too, it would need to include network connectivity for those departments.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Arel. So maybe if you could, we would appreciate your working on that, giving us something.
Okay.
Lee?
Just to clarify, Arel, when we talk about bringing it to code, it's to make it capable for our employees, ADA-wise, and customers. You don't have to bring a building fully to code unless you're putting 50% of the value into it. Is that the rule of thumb?
Not necessarily. It depends on certain systems, life safety or otherwise. ADA doesn't matter. If it's changed, you know, we would have to bring it up. Other things, it is determined depending on the type of system. The level, the code has levels of alterations, level 1, level 2, level 3. So if we keep it into a level 1 or 2, which this looks like it'd be more of level 2, we may be able to not be required to or bring everything up to code.
That's what I was looking for.
Yeah, so I'd have to look at that. The thing is that I always, aside from the code is the minimum standard. I always look at, these are county employees, we should treat them equally as far as the space they work in. And so there are other standards that we would have as minimum standards for just county occupancy, both staffing and public. And so that's more, decisions that I would share with you that would go above and beyond the minimum requirement by code.
Thank you.
But the energy piece is a piece of it. We would leave it as is, unless we're replacing units, the HVAC, because of the age, we would obviously put in more energy efficient systems. But for now, what I'm hearing is, do kind of the minimal requirement to meet the code and not invest a lot of money in renovations. And if we can look at the level of alterations to not kick in maximum code improvement, I can do that.
I think you're where we're thinking. Thank you, Arel. I think I'm going to end this discussion with, it's always fun to talk about our facilities down here, even though some of us are frustrated for how long it takes. Ithaca Transportation Council has not met since our last meeting. I don't have any transportation report. Can we take the minutes of February 16th, please? Randy's moving it. Deb is seconding it. Any discussion on the minutes? Any corrections or changes? All those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. We had one budget adjustment and transfer out of highway. Any questions on that? I just thought it was interesting. We were moving everything over to the town contract services for snow and ice removal. And I'm just wondering if that's an area we have to look at in the highway budget come next year.
Part of our annual estimates for preparing the budget, for sure.
All right, what else, folks?
Jaunty red vest, Mike.
I'm sorry?
I like your jaunty red vest.
Oh, well, it's in honor of the Red House.
I'd have thought green was St. Patrick's tomorrow.
That's tomorrow.
Worth all the money we're spending?
Although I still would wager that the Red House was white when it was original. That'd be my best guess. We're ready to adjourn, folks? All right, let's adjourn. Thank you all. Norma and Lisa, thank you. Terry, thanks for being here. Taylor, always, thank you very much.